All right. So, Miss Belair, thank you so much for speaking today. Like, I'm Chaz Kangas with the Los Angeles Times, and I'm very excited watching your road to WrestleMania this year.
I am very, very excited. I feel like this is one of the biggest feeling WrestleManias, especially with it being in LA. So very excited.
Nice. Do you have connections to Los Angeles, like prior to maybe your WWE journey, or special memories of competing here?
Let me think. I don't really have much of a connection other than we've come there and we have a lot of different wrestling matches there. I also used to in college used to come there to run track a lot. So I love LA. It's always fun there. It always feels like big time when you're there. So I'm excited to be there. It's WrestleMania Hollywood. You can't help but be excited about being in Hollywood.
Absolutely. So, when we're talking Bianca Belair and WrestleMania, of course, we have to talk about 2 years ago, historic, first time ever, two black women main eventing WrestleMania, a moment that, on top of being a fantastic match, is going to outlive you, me, everyone is going to be reading this article. It's one of those things that really is going to always exist as long as wrestling will exist. So that in mind, being someone who one of the rare few who gets to be a part of those hyper historic moments, have you had a chance to go back and rewatch it? And if so, what type of feelings does that like bring up in your mind, body, and soul?
I mean, anytime anyone even brings up WrestleMania 37 when I got to main event, it just I feel like I'm already like starting to sweat a little bit. It's still surreal even when I think about it. And I've actually only watched that match back maybe once or twice. Just because it's so exhausting when I watch it because I get so emotional just watching it and I feel like I'm just in that moment all over again. But being able to be one of the first Black women to main event WrestleMania is just an honor because there's so many other women that have were just as amazing and they could have been in that position. So to know that my face is one of the faces that stand for that moment is amazing. But if you go back and you watch that match, just the beginning when I'm sitting in the match and I'm almost breaking down in tears in the wrestling ring when you don't want to cry tears in the wrestling ring, but I couldn't help it because that's just how big that moment was. It was just so much bigger than the both of us. It was unprecedented. It's going to go down in history and just inspire generations and generations, and to know that future women and men when they start wrestling and they go to matches for inspiration, that's going to be one of the matches that they pull up. So it's just really cool to be a part of a piece of history like that.
Wonderful. So, going back a little further at the start of your WWE journey with NXT, WWE's developmental, and you were in the unique position to have come to essentially start, as you've mentioned, interviews from scratch in NXT. And you mentioned other interviews, your background being in CrossFit, weightlifting, track and field, and you said that it really was starting from square one, and which I understand, and I get. But I am curious, like, as someone who's wound up creating such a unique style, do you find that even once you learned like the fundamentals and such, you were pulling back to those previous athletic endeavors to really find yourself and what you do?
Definitely, being someone that came in, I didn't even know how to do a headlock or a wrist lock or the most simplest wrestling move. So I feel like, once I learned the fundamentals of wrestling, I always relied on my past experiences, whether it was, things I did in track or CrossFit or gymnastics, because when I didn't know what else to do, that's what that was my second nature. But I feel like that's what really made me stand out and be unique. I was one of the first ones. It was ones before me as well, but that came from a different background, and I was able to, pull from my CrossFit, my powerlifting background, and I would power clean and press girls in the ring and doing things that people had never seen before. Or, my first week walking into WWE, I climbed up on the top rope and I did a 450, and I'm like, I did that. I learned how to do that when I was 5 years old in gymnastics. So those things came very naturally to me, and I feel like I was able to stand out and be unique because of my previous background. But it was a learning curve for me, and I feel like that has contributed to my success, especially with being an athlete and being coachable and being able to pick up on things very quickly. And I think that's one of one of the main reasons too why WWE has this NIL program where they are recruiting more collegiate athletes, because we make amazing WWE superstars. We have that it factor, we have the athleticism, we have the background, and we can pull from that, and it really contributes to our success here in WWE.
Wonderful. And you mentioned that that learning curve and coming from that sort of position.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't quite realize that this means that from the first time you know step in that ring, pretty much every part of your career has been in front of the eyes of a worldwide platform. So essentially learning in front of a whole audience. So that in mind, did that present any additional personal challenges or personal advantages having that sort of such exposure through every single step of the journey?
I would I would say that both, because I feed off of the crowd, and I'm someone who actually loves being in front of a crowd and performing. And not only did I start learning and doing my first wrestling matches in front of crowds, my very first tryout with WWE was actually in front of a crowd. And they've never done that before, and I don't think they've ever done it again. Um I think they did it recently this year, but for the very first time, they and my very first tryout was at the Arnold Classic, and they were having an NXT show. And during intermission, they brought us out, and we had to try out in front of a live audience. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had to grab a microphone and cut a promo in front of a live crowd. I didn't even know what a promo was, and the crowd got to decide they want to boo or cheer me. So that was my very first experience ever. Like, I didn't even get inside of a wrestling ring and practice in a room by myself. It was in front of a crowd. And so I feel like it helped me though, because that's when I realized, oh, I love being in front of a crowd. I wasn't scared, I wasn't nervous, and I just went all for it, and I loved it. So I feel like I was able to feed off of it, but at the same time, like you said, it can become difficult when you're learning something for the very first time. You don't get to go and practice and drill over and over and over again, and do, in track we did mock track meets where no one was there. Here you're learning on live, and it's live TV. You're learning on live TV. So if you mess up, you just mess up on live TV. You become great at becoming adaptable.
Mhm. Nice. So fast forwarding to the now, we mentioned the main event 2 years ago, and then last year your fabulous match against Becky Lynch, with the only two women to have ever won a WrestleMania main event facing off, and you coming out on top, starting your current Raw Women's title reign. And then in the year between then and now, we've seen publicly that there's been some changes within WWE as a company. So as a talent, I'm wondering, has that made your road to WrestleMania this year in any sort of way different than in the past?
I don't think it's made my road to WrestleMania any different. If you look at any road to WrestleMania, it's always, high energy, and it's very busy, and you don't really have much time to think about anything else other than how are you going to get to WrestleMania, and who are you going to face? And everyone's dream is to get to WrestleMania. So our mindset is always getting to WrestleMania and performing at WrestleMania. And that's really our what's always at the forefront of our mind, and going out there and putting smiles on fans' faces. I mean, that's our number one goal, is putting smiles on fans' faces and going out there and tearing the house down. So my mindset is always my road to WrestleMania, how am I going to get there, and then stealing the show at WrestleMania.
Excellent. And then this year at WrestleMania, your opponent is Asuka, who has been dominant in the WWE for the better part of a decade. And prior to that was a massive star in Japan. And we've seen her lean a little more into that Japanese style in the past few months. So someone taking a pretty different style like that, and I know all the WWE superstars have a different style on their own, but just in terms of the aesthetic to it and how it's known, and then you putting or facing someone like that, is your preparation for that kind of style, like whether the conditioning or things, very different from how it would otherwise sort of be?
I would say no, because I always say I live by the motto, I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. I don't prepare when the opportunity presents itself. I prepare all year long so that I'm ready for whoever, whenever. I feel like, Asuka, I've always considered Asuka one of the best female wrestlers in the world. And she's amazing. And I know that I have to bring my A game with her. And she has a lot of experience. So I feel like I also have a lot of experience where, this will be my third WrestleMania where my goal is to go three-peat and win 3 years in a row as champion. I feel like I'm at the point now where when I step in the ring, I'm not playing my opponent's game. I want the opponent to be playing my game.
Mhm.
But I know what Asuka comes with. She's very fast, very quick, hard hitting. I'm gonna have to be on my toes and ducking and dodging everything that she does. And I'm just excited to get in the ring with her because I call myself the best. And if I want to be the best, I have to step in the ring with the best. So she's gonna push me and push me to be the absolute best version of myself. So I'm just going to rely on all my ESTs and
Mhm.
go in there and just know what I'm up against. But I'm excited for this match. It's a different dynamic, and I think it's something that's going to be very different from any other match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and that's part of the appeal to that match and the show as a whole. There's so many different styles, and I'm absolutely yours one of the ones I'm most looking forward to. And another thing I've been looking forward to and really enjoying this year on this road to WrestleMania, with it going Hollywood, has been the movie parodies they've been revisiting from years ago. And as we saw, I believe 2 weeks ago, it premiered the promo with you and your husband of the Street Profits, Montez Ford. So, and which also brings up on top of that just another example of your chemistry really being evident. And he's someone who also in interviews is shown to be someone who's just as supportive and infectiously encouraging outside the ring as he is in it. So having a relationship like that in the industry where you're both at essentially the very top of what you do. So do you find that there's a level of enhancement in the communication with that as opposed to dating someone who would be outside the industry?
I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but I couldn't imagine being with my husband and either I was in and he wasn't, or vice versa, because we are together all the time. We're on the road so much. And so, I really feel like it plays to our benefit that we're married and we're both in WWE because we get to see each other all the time. He
Mhm.
understands the ins and outs of WWE. He understands why something is so big when it's so big, and the highs and the lows. And I really feel like it's even helped our marriage so much because even with communication, I mean, we're together all the time. So even if we get in an argument or we're mad at each other, I'm like, well, we're gonna have to talk this out. This is gonna be a long 4 days. uh but it's really cool. We get to celebrate together. And my husband, he's very supportive. He's my number one fan. I'm his number one fan. And we get to do you know crazy wild things like reenact the Titanic. Like, you
Mhm.
would never think that you would get to do that, and I get to do that, and I get to do it with my husband. And so I think it adds to both of us. I get to shine in my own light as Bianca Belair, and they get to see me as Bianca Belair in the ring, but then they also get to see another side of me as like Bianca Belair as the wife with my husband, and that dynamic. So I think it really adds something special to the both of us.
Mhm. Wonderful. So, two more questions. One, given you've mentioned like the past few WrestleManias and how, critically, commercially, genuinely beloved those matches are, and the great matches you've had like along the way. Is there any match you're particularly proud of that you wish was more well known amongst your fans?
I would say War Games
Mhm.
from when I was in NXT. It was the very first time that there was ever the very first War Games match, and it was in NXT. And I loved that performance from myself and also along with all the other women at that time. Um, it was we had an amazing locker room, and every single woman got to showcase themselves, and we got to show that women, we're hardcore. We can go in there and throw it down just like the men, and really just show our skills as a full locker room. And it was something special that I got to be a part of. But I love my performance in that match. And then also too, I would say NXT Takeover versus Shayna Baszler. My very first time on the big stage, and that was at Takeover. So it was some of my very first performances. So I was very very proud of those performances.
Yeah, the War Games match in particular is a special place in my heart because I remember I was at a restaurant in Minneapolis that just happened to have it like on one of the TVs, and then
Mhm.
people there who may have not been familiar or actively watching the WWE product it just sort of catches the eye, like, you know, multiple women in a 2-ring steel cage, the spectacle of it. And then by the end of it, this entire restaurant of people just all looking over and just following along, like, you know, fork watching. They're there with their families and things, and they're just suddenly all taken in by it. So yeah, it's something special about that one. So, and finally, you are so known for your style, from the presentation, the way you carry yourself, the way that everything is, you know, so definitively you. And this being the third WrestleMania, it is of course the third year that you've had special litany of WrestleMania Bianca Belair specialty merchandise. So going way back, being someone who cares so much about the presentation and the detail on it, do you recall your reaction the first time that you saw a piece of merchandise with your likeness or your name on it? And just curious, your family's reaction as well, who may have not seen that being the end game after working in Atlanta for a flavor distribution company call center.
Yeah, my first time seeing a piece of merchandise with my likeliness was in NXT, and it's actually my favorite merch shirt ever. And I don't even know if it's still available. So if anybody has it, that's like the OG merchandise. But it's my very favorite merch shirt ever. I actually put it on some gear that I have, and I remember just losing my mind. I was like, what do I do now? Like, do I still eat breakfast and lunch? Like, my face is on a t-shirt. This is amazing. And that was at the time of NXT where very few people got merch. When I was in NXT, maybe the champion had merch, and maybe two other females had merch. So to get merch was an honor, and it was special. And my family, I didn't even have time to gift them the merch because they bought it as soon as it came out. And so like my mom and my dad and my nieces and my best friend, like everybody was wearing all of my merch. If you went back to Knoxville, Tennessee, where I'm from, you probably would have seen just as much Bianca Belair shirts as University of Tennessee orange shirts. Which, if you've ever been to University of Tennessee on a college game day, you know how much orange you see. But the support was amazing, and it was really cool to see. I just remember just being so happy about it because, like I said, back then a lot of people didn't get merch in NXT, and it's still my very favorite merch shirt ever.
Spectacular. So this is going to send the eBay price way up once this goes to print. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Looking so forward to seeing you at WrestleMania, and congrats on congrats in advance on making three-peat history.
Thank you. I like how you put it in the atmosphere. Put it out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Repeat.
Oh, there we go. The vision will come.
Yes.